Hello, this is the editor speaking. I am tired from dragging Raven's unconscious body into a bed. I can only assume he was on his way to another secure location for this microphone before he fell into one of Jackal's traps. Raven will probably be ready to record next week when we talk about pandas. This week, though, we're talking about sun bears. Sun bears are the smallest bear in the world, standing about 2 feet tall and about 5 feet long. This makes them comparable to a medium to large dog, such as a German Shepherd. It is surprising then that so many people wrongly assumed that the specimen featured in the news a few weeks ago at a Chinese zoo was, in fact, a person dressed up like a bear. Thanks to a few simple searches, our best researchers were able to determine that even the most cutting-edge in mascot, costume, and fursuit technology cannot replicate something even slightly resembling the sun bear. Sun bears really just look like that. But let's talk about things that aren't swiftly fading from relevance. Sun bears live in Southeast Asia. Their population is split between the mainland in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam, and the Southeast Asian island chain that includes Malaysia and Indonesia. This part of the world is almost all jungle, and as you expect, it is hot and humid almost all year round. Besides the sun bears, it is also home to tigers, clouded leopards, binturongs, deholes, and the list goes on. This habitat has its ups and downs. For one, because it is so hot, there is no such thing as winter scarcity. Something is always growing, so the bears don't need to hibernate. This has resulted in a cascading effect on the bear's biology and behaviors. Most black bears live in temperate or taiga climates, so hibernation is key to their survival. Like we talked about last week with grizzly bears, most black bears need to gorge themselves on calories from summer to fall, typically mate in the summer, and then hibernate and give birth in the winter. However, since the sun bear always has food, this entire life cycle gets thrown out of the window. Instead of hunting for the most calorically dense foods, sun bears instead eat mostly fruit, honeys, insects, and small reptiles, mammals, and birds. They may hunt, but not for anything larger than they are, or at least that's the case as far as we've been able to observe. Their reproductive cycle also gets thrown out the window. Most bears mate in the summer, but the embryo doesn't actually implant until winter. However, since sun bears don't have to carefully time anything, they are fertile all year round and give birth whenever the baby is ready. Usually they have 1 to 2 cubs at a time, which they will spend the next 3 years raising. However, this poses some interesting challenges. Bears are born blind and deaf, much like a kitten, but it takes way longer for their senses to develop. Usually this isn't a problem. They would be living out those first dangerous months in a hole in the ground with a giant angry mama bear to protect them. However, sun bears don't get this luxury. Their cubs don't open their eyes for nearly a month, and even after they do, they're functionally blind for the first 50 days of life. It also takes this long for their hearing to develop. So the question we have to ask then is, if the cubs are helpless and the mother isn't hibernating in a den, how on earth is she raising these babies? So I asked the researchers, and they all threw their arms up in the air and shrugged. What we were able to gather is that the bears build nests up in the treetops and then move their cubs from nest to nest by holding them in her arms. Beyond that, though, we couldn't find any specifics, like how often they move nesting sites, or how she is building the nests while carrying around babies. Does she hide them? Do they ever fall out? How high up are these nests? Who knows? So, sun bears are a bear that doesn't bear, but what else do they have going? Kind of a lot. They have tons of adaptations that we just don't see anywhere else. First off, their insanely long tongues, which they use like an anteater to grab insects and honey out of trees. They also have enormous teeth and a strong bite force compared to their size, which we assume is to crack open tree bark. Aside from that, they have flat paws and long claws, which are used to climb trees, and as you have probably assumed by now, they are semi-arboreal and spend most of their lives climbing through the treetops. They aren't as graceful as cats or monkeys, though, so they spend a lot of time on the ground moving from one site to another. Like every other bear, they are not social creatures. To protect themselves from attacks, whether that comes from another bear or from a tiger, they have baggy skin that lets them turn completely around to attack their attackers. Their fur is also short and dense, which helps to soften blows and keep them from getting too beat up. And of course, we can't forget their chest marking, which is where their name comes from. When threatened, they will often stand up on two legs and flash this marking at attackers to intimidate them. They may be small, but that doesn't mean they are weak. More than this, however, sun bears are one of the most, if perhaps the most intelligent species of bear that we know of. Researchers, not ours specifically, but others in the field, have seen this in action on several occasions. In one notable case, they put a bag of sugar behind a locked cabinet, and the bear used its claw like a lockpick to crack the cabinet open and steal the food. They also have the ability to mimic faces that is on par with gorillas and humans. At this point you might be asking, if not friend, why friend-shaped? And regrettably, that question has caused these bears a lot of problems. Like everything else on Earth, they face problems like habitat loss due to deforestation, but a big threat to these bears is our need to pack bond with anything and everything. People have been trying to keep sun bears as pets since we discovered them. On a local level, tribal kings have historically kept them as pets as a sign of status, but with globalization, it's now become an anybody rich enough to buy a bear thing. However, never mind how unsuited these bears are to captivity, the way you get a pet bear usually results in at least one of the other bear dying in the process. Even after you manage to capture a cub, feeding them takes a lot of work, and most captors don't know how to feed them properly, let alone where to take them for a vet checkup or how to house them. In other words, despite how blindingly obvious this should be, it is worth reiterating that just because you can buy something, that doesn't mean you should. These are wild animals, and the best thing we can do is leave them in their natural habitat. Even better yet, we need to keep their habitats preserved so that we don't end up losing 1/9 of the world's bear species. But I think that wraps up about everything you need to know about sun bears. However, I have an exciting announcement to make. Thanks to your unnecessary contributions, the zoo is finally able to afford a drone, so I'm going to splice that footage in at the end of the video. If you want us to keep upgrading our setup, then do nothing and be patient. But if you're the kind of person who insists on clicking buttons, then like and subscribe thing is just over there. Oh yeah, and I found this note on Raven's body. I think Jacko must have dropped it. It just says, owls? I don't know what that's about. Anyway, I'm going to bed.